Hello, welcome to the second episode of Books to Read. My name is Matt, and today I'd like to tell you about a novel called A Man from Planet Earth by Giancarlo Genta. Giancarlo Genta is a professor of machine design and construction at the Polytechnic University in Turin. So I got this book from Humble Bundle. I read it here on my tablet, and this novel is part of a genre of scientific novels, which looks to distinguish itself a little bit from science fiction. So the genre of scientific novels seeks to be scientifically accurate, which is a little bit different than science fiction. Now, I'm not going to make a criticism on either direction because I have not read a huge amount of science fiction or novels in this genre of scientific novels. I may have a few more, but I haven't read them yet to talk about the comparisons between the genres. So, keeping in mind that it's a scientific novel and it seeks for scientific accuracy, as you read this novel, what's very interesting is that the things in this novel should be very scientifically plausible with people's current scientific understanding. So whenever you read it, it's not taking as much of a jump as, wow, that's very interesting, but it's less fantasy than maybe some science fiction. I mean, we're taking the presumption that this thing is plausible. So the plot of the story is that a man called Thomas Taylor. He's a university professor, and one day an alien comes up to him and tells him that he needs his help. Thomas Taylor is very skeptical because in the novel it takes place during modern Earth times. So to have an alien come up to you, you might not be so quick to believe that. So the alien wants Thomas Taylor's help to get his opinion about how to fight this alien war. Nothing that the Confederation has been doing has been working. So Thomas Taylor and his wife Susan, they go to space, and they end up being hurled into this adventure. What I really like about the story is that though I see that part as being a little implausible, and they could have stretched that out a little bit longer, a few things I like at the beginning is that they really show that with how advanced the alien technology is in space, with how advanced it is, they've all become a little lazy. They're all very dependent on their computers. And with how dependent they are on technology, their technology too their technology too, their computers, they too have a personality of their own. And so Thomas, being less reliant on technology than them, of course it's modern times. I mean, we're relying on so much technology for me to make this video, for me to read this story here, and everything else. But these aliens are especially reliant on technology, and that's like a small subplot at the beginning. And sorry. What ends up happening in the story that I really like too is that so another point to clear up is whenever they say aliens in the story, they rarely use the term aliens in the conventional sense that we might mean it. So in the story, all intelligent life just refers to each other as humans. We're all of different human species, and that they could be so another point to clear up is whenever they say aliens in the story, they rarely use the term aliens in the conventional sense that we might mean it. So in the story, all intelligent life just refers to each other as human. Not all alien species, or human species as they refer in the novel, all have 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, and we can all speak in the same ways. He really tries to differentiate between that, and you get a little bit of this of of the cultures he can imagine from that. But I wish the story had a bit more to describe the different alien cultures. But there really are moments in the story where what I really don't like in the novel is that Taylor really jumps within rank within this system, and it really felt like it was an easy way in order to push the story forward. And I can see the trouble that maybe the author had with some of that, but I think it could have been a little bit slower with it. I do imagine the point of it was to give us a story, then to give us things that we imagine through current scientific understanding to be very possible within that. So I really don't like how he jumped in rank at different times and different points. Another interesting thing is I wonder what language the author must have been thinking of and stuff whenever we think about the different names of the different characters and different species. Because honestly, when I read some of these names throughout the story, I cannot read all of them quite so easily. Of course, I read them here. I'm not reading aloud to an audience. But if I had to read to an audience, I might have had to practice some of these names a few times, especially the constant use of the letter Q. And I have to wonder, what sound am I to make at a few points with some of that? So it was very interesting to see the creativity that the author had with a lot of that as well. Now there is one species that is always referred to as alien, and that would be the villain species, which I would imagine would be pronounced Quarn, I think. So it's referred to as alien because it's completely different. They're not sure if it's intelligent. They can't communicate with it. They are not sure what it wants. So I think I've shown you a few of these things, or I think I've said a few of these things standing up. I'm going to sit down and show you a few specific points about the novel that highlight a few of the points that I made thus far, and yeah, I like the novel. I haven't read any other novels in this type of genre. Maybe somebody here can recommend another scientific novel. But for the first one I read, yeah, it was very interesting to read that these things are possible through a certain understanding about different alien species and then exploring the biology of one and a lot of that. Yeah. So I'm going to. Okay, now let's look at a few specific points in the novel. So this here is the cover page. Now here on page 31, I think that here is a good example that Tom and his wife were both given the clothes of the Aswa cat, and the clothes are kind of wet and they're not comfortable. So right here we see an example where the computer intuitively sees what they would prefer and gives them better clothes. Okay, let's look at another good example. Here on the next page we get, I believe, the first example of the mental projector. Yes, so on this very next page we get the one of the first examples of the mental projector. So basically you can put this thing on your head and just receive information. And then Tom begins to see a kind of laziness, a kind of complacency from some of this from the aliens. Okay, here on page 55, we should be seeing his first promotion. So here on page 55, we see the first promotion here. So we see a situation where the captain of the ship is no longer in charge. So Tom tries to give an order, and then somebody tells the computer, "Hey, well, Tom," and his name that he also goes by is right here. Another name, a little difficult to say. Take a hat? I'm not sure how to say that. Maybe somebody else can help me out with that one a bit. So we see that instantly he's given command of the ship, and then we see several other situations where this happens as well. Now, here on page 226, I highlighted this because it was a good moment to show different ways that people communicate, even as different species. And we don't all have mouths, and not all the different human species can communicate the same kind of way. So we see this example right here, where an alien kind of uses its tentacles, I guess, almost to type to communicate with everybody else in this council. Now, here on page 264, now here on page 264, we see a pretty detailed description of them trying to understand a completely alien species. Now, maybe we've seen this in different movies, books, video games, I don't know what, but it is very interesting that when we read it here, that there is a kind of scientific consensus about it. So with that, I'm about done trying to show a few examples. So with that, I'm done trying to show a few examples, specific examples of the book about what I like, what I dislike, so that way you can see it yourself in the book as well, and not only take my word for it. So with that, I hope that you enjoy this video, and with that, I will see you later. Bye.